Coming up on today's episode of Insights into Technology, the FTC tells big tech to stop censoring Americans for the crown. Mac users prove once again that clicking on sketchy support links is a national pastime, and much more. It's a week full of security flaws and bureaucratic backflips. Let's get into it before something else gets leaked.
Insightful podcasts by informative hosts. Insights into Things, a podcast network. Welcome to Insights into Technology, a podcast exploring the latest in computers, networking, home automation, mobile computing, and all things technology related. Our hosts will take a deeper dive into the latest and greatest in tech trends and give you the information you need to enable your tech-centric world.
This is Insights into Technology, Episode 31, Security Theater and the Folding Table of Broken Dreams. I'm your host, Joseph Whalen, and this is your tech news for the week. Our first article comes to us from The Record. Censorship, not on our watch, says the FTC. The latest dust-up in data privacy arena. Spoiler alert, it involves censorship, encryption, and America versus the UK and EU. On August 21st, 2025, FTC Chairman Andrew Ferguson, a Trump-appointed figure, sent formal letters to stop U.S. tech firms, warning them not to comply with foreign censorship demands or encryption-weakening laws. He warned that, quote, censoring Americans to comply with foreign powers laws may violate Section 5 of the FTC Act, which bars unfair deceptive practices. The FTC Act has historically tackled issues as mundane as false fire safety claims or hidden lending fees. The regulation targets include the EU's Digital Services Act, the UK's Online Safety Act, and the UK's attempt to demand a backdoor into Apple's iCloud encryption. Ferguson underscored that weakening encryption or censoring U.S. users, even indirectly via global compliance strategies, risks eroding Americans' privacy and free expression, and may also expose them to surveillance, identity theft, or fraud. He invited executives from Akamai, Alphabet, Amazon, Apple, Cloudflare, Discord, GoDaddy, Meta, Microsoft, Signal, Snap, Slack, and X to meet with the FTC to explain how they'll uphold U.S. legal obligations amid conflicting international laws. So, in short, the FTC just put big tech on notice. Don't trade away privacy and speech protections for the convenience of cross-border legal compliance. The invitation to chat was, with the agency may wind up being more of a subpoena in disguise. So there's a number of things here we kind of have to pick apart here. The first is the tension surrounding global compliance at this point in time. Enterprises managing global platforms now face a complex legal gauntlet. The Digital Services Act and the Online Safety Act push for broader censorship and weaker encryption, while U.S. law may penalize any erosion of user protections, even if done overseas. Now, you're looking at, obviously, domestic penalties here. You're not going to have the European Union upholding any of these United States regulations. So if a company like Meta, for instance, complies with the UK laws, they could face potential fines from the U.S. government if it entails censoring U.S. citizens, even if it's outside the country. So I think it'll be interesting to see how that plays out, because it wasn't that long ago that the United States government was demanding pretty much the same things in return. They wanted backdoors. They wanted to break encryption. They wanted Apple to give up access to their infrastructure. And Apple had cleverly engineered their solutions to basically make that impossible in the US. Another thing is the implications to engineering and architecture. To comply safely, companies may need to implement region-specific backends, differentiated encryption policies, content filters, and localization of data handling, a heavy lift for infrastructure deployment and auditability. Now, this is done to a certain extent already, especially at the DoD side of things, where federal regulations mandate that your data has to be housed domestically. It can't be touched by foreign citizens. You can't have foreign citizens working in the data centers where it's at. So there's a certain amount of that already at the government level. This is kind of marks the first time that you're seeing this at a commercial level, at least in the United States. One of the things that you're going to find that this is akin to is some of the things that some of the less freedom-friendly countries in the world, like you've heard of the Great Firewall of China, Russia has their own off switch. And what you're seeing here is a tool, the internet, that was built for international collaboration. There's no borders or anything when it comes to the internet, is now being sliced up and slowly siloed. But that typically happens when there's information on the internet that a given government doesn't like. They don't want their citizens having direct access to international information that might not necessarily be in line with what their government wants to portray. So this is kind of an interesting twist of fates here, where the United States is indirectly right now taking the same stance that a Russia or a China or North Korea would have taken, and basically shirking its responsibility at the international level for complying with laws. So I think you're going to see a lot of this in the future, especially under the current administration. We have a government that really doesn't respect other countries right now. So I'm not shocked by this at all. There's a risk of enforcement issues here and reputational damage. Should American users experience degraded security or censorship due to foreign law compliance, companies risk regulatory fines and public trust erosion, especially if their encryption claims become deceptive under FTC scrutiny. Now, you can make an argument there that what they're doing to comply with UK laws isn't at all unusual. They're not breaking anything. They're basically providing the level of access needed for law enforcement to do their job for the most part. Americans who typically are very privacy-centric have had very little effort giving up those freedoms and those privacies ever since 9/11 and the Patriot Act. I hope this is a sign that we're clawing some of that freedom and some of that protection back. But given some of the other things that we've seen come out of the current administration, I would say this is more smoke and mirrors than anything that's really out to help the people. This is more pounding our chest and asserting dominance of the United States, and I don't know how far that's going to go. So this is going to have an impact on commercial strategies. It's going to have an impact on roadmaps. Legal fragmentation may force strategy rethinking. A one-size-fits-all global policy may no longer work. It complicates how you're going to go about business internationally. Product teams need to weigh whether to withdraw features like advanced encryption, in Apple's case, from certain markets, or maintain differentiated versions, affecting innovation. Apple, I hate to beat them up on this, but they're the ones that seem to be victimized most on this with their bifurcated app store now. Their advanced encryption having been pulled back in some countries. It's a bad precedent, and I don't think it's getting better anytime soon. I think you have a lot of decision makers that don't understand the technology, don't understand the requirements, and really don't understand the limitations involved. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out in the long run. Next up, we have an article from InfoSecurity magazine. Macs aren't immune, they just think they are. Your Mac may just be tricking you into downloading malware via fake tech support sites, because what could go wrong? Criminals are running a malvertising campaign that lures Mac OS users to fake help sites, prompting them to copy and paste a, quote, fix into terminal, but in fact that installs a variant of the atomic Mac OS stealer dubbed SHAMOS. These counterfeit support sites, such as mac-safer.com and rescue-mac.com, urge users to execute a one-line command that downloads SHAMOS, removes Gatekeeper safeguards, and sets executable permissions and launches the malware. Once on board, SHAMOS conducts system checks to evade sandbox environments, then uses Apple's script to gather sensitive data, including credentials, Apple Notes, browser content, keychain items, and cryptography wallet files. It bundles the data into a zip file via curl and exfiltrates it. The malware also persists by planting a launch daemon and can drop additional payloads such as a fake Ledger Live app and a botnet module. CrowdStrike attributes the SHAMOS variant to the Cookie Spider group, part of the broader Amos malware as a service ecosystem. Since June 2025, this campaign is estimated to have targeted hundreds of environments across the globe. So Mac OS users looking for quick fixes just walked into a trap, a malware setup masquerading as tech help that steals everything from your password to your crypto and keeps coming back even after you reboot. Now, this comes as news to Mac users, but this is a scheme that Windows users have been dealing with for years now. The famous Windows, Windows support scam, I think it was, where they hijack your browser screen, they go full screen, they tell you you've been infected. Call this number and we can help you out. That was more of a social engineering take. Some people fell for it. I happen to have one of my users who inadvertently gave his credit card information out, which I thought was kind of strange. But this is the first time we're really seeing this type of attack on Mac. And really, it's more malicious than the social engineering side. There is a social engineering aspect to this. But the fact that they're having you execute code on your side is even more dangerous. This is another example of an elevated endpoint risk for Mac-heavy environments. Even if you're not Mac-heavy, all you have to do is infiltrate one system, get a foothold within your organization, and they can branch out from there. Organizations with Mac-focused workforces now face heightened risks of stealthy credential and data theft. Traditional antivirus may fall short against a threat that uses social engineering to bypass Mac OS Gatekeeper. And I think that's really the important thing here, is that even though Mac is a very well-protected and fairly secure operating system, it's not bulletproof. The fact that this attack is convincing people to willingly bypass those controls means that it doesn't matter how secure, how bulletproof your OS is. If you're going to let somebody in the front door, they've got full run of the house at that point in time, and they can do anything they want. This also signifies the continued concern about insider threat via social engineering. SHAMOS uses the click fix technique, which means malware can be installed willingly by tricking users into pasting commands. Enterprises must adopt stronger user awareness training and limit terminal access privileges to combat this. Now, in my case, I have a hybrid environment where I have a few Macs, but it's mostly Windows. That inherently has limitations on how much control you have over the Macs. There's some, but it's not the same level of group policy that you can do across the board, or RMM solutions that can give you the level of access that you need. So this is an educational thing, right? You have to make sure that your users are aware, one, of the threat, two, of not to do what this threat requires you to do, and three, what to do when they see something like this. They need to be able to report it, and they need to escalate, and they need to know what those escalation points are. This also highlights credential and data protection gaps in general. With SHAMOS targeting keychain, Apple Notes, browser-stored passwords, and crypto wallets, businesses must reinforce data encryption, deploy endpoint detection solutions tailored to macOS, and monitor for unusual exfiltration behavior. These are all things you should be doing now, but these are things that even doing these things, this type of thing could slip through. And finally, this signifies the supply chain and support ecosystem risks that are a recurring theme these days in cybersecurity. The campaign shows how spoofed tech support infrastructure can be weaponized via malvertising or phishing. Companies relying on third-party support tools like GitHub, and we have a story on that coming up as well. They need to vet sources carefully and whitelist trusted domains or repositories. It's an iterative process. There's no magic bullet solution here that's going to solve everything, but awareness is the first thing, education is the next, and prevention follows. Next up is a story from the New York Times. When government efficiency means risky uploads, meet Doge. It looks like America's most sacred personal numbers just went for a joyride into the cloud, and yes, that includes yours too. A whistleblower complaint filed by the Social Security Administration Chief Data Officer Charles Borges alleges that the Department of Government Efficiency uploaded a complete copy of the Social Security Administration's database containing personal data on over 300 million Americans to an insecure cloud server with zero proper security protocols or oversight. Although there's no confirmed breach yet, experts warn this move poses a catastrophic risk, potentially enabling identity theft, fraudulent benefit claims, and could even force reissuing Social Security numbers en masse. Boy, would that be a nightmare. Social Security Administration officials maintain that existing systems remain secure and claim there's been no known compromise. All that means is they haven't found it yet. The whistleblower emphasizes Doge staff bypassed legal controls, ignored judicial orders, and completely sidestepped oversight, prompting legal and legislative reviews by bodies including the Office of Special Counsel and congressional committees. That seems like a playbook for the current administration, where they basically do whatever they want and wait for someone to stop them. The Supreme Court cleared Doge to access the Social Security data amid litigation earlier this year. Another government agency in, cahoots here. Soon after the insecure upload reportedly occurred, a move that internal risk assessments called, quote, catastrophic. And it wasn't done quietly. The Social Security Administration's own chief information officer signed off on it, so they knew what they were doing. They knew what they were allowing when this happened, and they still let it happen. In short, the Trump administration's Doge team and key administration insiders enabled the insecure cloud hosting of the nation's most sensitive data. Whether it's benign or malignant intent, the implications are dire, and we're just now starting to unpack the fallout. Now, this is a scab that's been torn off with the latest news of the breach being confirmed. It was suspected, it was alleged, there were unconfirmed reports when it was going on, and not a single soul in the administration seemed even slightly interested in looking into it. This kind of gives us some idea of what government data governance crisis we're in right now, and it serves as a cautionary tale. Enterprises with sensitive data, especially regulated industries like healthcare and finance, should view this as a stark reminder. Cloud migrations without strict governance, oversight, and compliance checks invite disaster. Private sector firms must treat data handling with more rigor or risk losing trust and triggering legal firestorms. If a company did this, if for instance, one of the credit bureaus had this happen, the federal government would be all over. They'd be shut down by now at this point. They'd be paying hefty fines. There's no accountability to this at this point in time, and I think that's largely what the problem is. There's also keys into vendor and cloud oversight issues. Public and private entities alike must continuously audit and monitor vendor and internal access. There was no vetting of any of these people from DOJ. There was no security clearances issued. There was no oversight. There was no supervising. There was presumably no logging of any of this stuff. I mean, this was literally letting a hacker walk in your front door and steal everything you had on your hard drive. And still, there's been no action by the federal government about this. In this case here, the insider threat was deliberate. It was an insider threat by a human link. This isn't just about tech. It's about people in this case here. The Social Security Administration's CIO approval of the insecure transfer underscores the need for robust role-based access, separation of duties, and alerting when sensitive operations occur. No one person should have the keys to the kingdom. There needs to be checks and balances so that this type of abuse, and yes, that could be a statement towards this entire administration, that this type of abuse of power does not go unchecked. For enterprise architecture teams and HR, this means tandem alignments between identity and security governance. This was, you can't even, give the benefit of the doubt and say that they were asleep at the wheel here. They deliberately drove this vehicle off the road and over a cliff, and no one's being held accountable for it at this point in time. And as long as there's no accountability, you can't possibly expect anyone to learn a lesson from here for things to improve. You have to acknowledge you have a problem first, and the federal government seems to even have a problem with that at this point. Anyway, we'll see how this goes. I would highly recommend everyone out there, and I'm not a financial advisor, but just for the sake of security, I would highly recommend everyone out there go to the 3 credit bureau monitoring bureaus and put a credit hold on your credit reports there. So at least you're notified if someone tries to do identity theft and get into your bank accounts. We're going to take a quick break, but before we do, I want to take a moment to invite our listening and viewing audience, if you don't do so already, to subscribe to the podcast. You can find audio and video versions of this podcast listed on Insights into Things. You can find audio-only versions of this podcast listed as Insights into Technology. We'd also love to hear from you. Give us a call. Leave a voicemail for us on our number at 856-403-8788. That's 856-403-8788. We'd love to hear from you. Tell us how we're doing. Give us your feedback, your input, and your take on these stories. And if you'd like to get on the air, we can certainly reserve your comments for a future segment that we can address them in. If you're shy and you don't want to call, you can email us at comments@insightsintothings.com or check out our main website at www.insightsintothings.com. We'll be right back.
Are you tired of your favorite gaming podcast finishing with a play?
Oh, no!
Well, check out No Credits Rolled, where we play the games but rarely finish them. How's it going, folks? I'm Sam Whalen, your friendly host at No Credits Rolled, the ultimate gaming podcast, where we dish out the latest scoops and reviews on all your beloved video games.
Hey, listen!
Not only that, but we spice things up with some guest interviews and even give you, yes you, a chance to have your say. Tune in every other week for a fresh dose of No Credits Rolled, available on all major podcast platforms, and hit us up on social media at No Credits Rolled. So why wait? Let's dive into the gaming world together, where finishing games is optional, but the fun is guaranteed.
Our next article comes to us from Cyberscoop. Cyberscoop. Bureaucracy gets a makeover. Now hiring hackers, not historians. Here's what just dropped in the world of federal cyber hiring. Bureaucracies have never sounded this edgy. On August 21st, 2025, the Cybersecurity Hiring Modernization Act was introduced by Representatives Nancy Mace, Republican of South Carolina, and Shontel Brown, Democrat from Ohio. The bill aims to shift federal cybersecurity hiring from traditional degree requirements to a skills-based model. The lawmakers argued this change is vital to expand the applicant pool and tap into skilled talent that doesn't have a 4-year diploma. Crucial at a time when cyber threats against the government are intensifying, and given our last story, when the federal government is abdicating all responsibility for cybersecurity. That was my ad-libbing there, by the way. Under the proposal, the Office of Personnel Management would publish annually any changes to education-related job qualifications and aggregate data on the educational backgrounds of newly hired federal cyber professionals. Federal agencies could still require educational credentials, but only if the requirement is legally necessary in the location where the job will be performed, and the education directly correlates to job competencies. And so this is a case. Now, I'm the first person to tell you that if you go out and spend money on a degree, it's not going to guarantee you know anything about the subject or you're going to get a good job. You're buying a piece of paper, but you need to benefit from the learning experience associated with that piece of paper. That being said, I'm all in favor of trade schools and certifications and any other technical competency that you can acquire that doesn't require a 4-year degree. You can have a perfectly successful and highly innovative job in IT and cybersecurity without ever having a degree. So I don't want to make this sound like this is the government lowering standards so that other people can come in. The one thing that this will do is diversify the talent pipelines. For enterprise IT and cybersecurity teams working on federal government agency payrolls or projects, the shift signals a broader opportunity to source talent from boots-on-the-ground skilled professionals, boot camp grads, certificate holders, and self-taught experts rather than only degrees. In hiring for IT positions at my company, I always value experience over education. You can go to school for 8 years and not learn a thing, but you can be on the front lines of an IT organization or just a commercial entity in their IT department and gain far more knowledge and skill over the course of 3 or 4 years doing that than going to a 4-year college. Everyone knows there's prerequisites at college, so you're not always getting information that's necessarily pertinent to what you need, but there's a purpose behind that, and I don't want to discount that. This may also result in a realigning of training and upskilling strategies, not just for the federal government, but for commercial organizations as well. Organizations supporting government contractors may need to pivot from traditional credential-based vetting to competency-based assessments and skills validation, such as challenge tests and hands-on evaluations. This will also have an impact on vendor qualifications and compliance. The industry that I'm in we're under very strict federal regulation with CMMC 2.0, and we have to maintain those levels. So having people come in that don't necessarily meet measurable educational requirements could complicate that. Tech vendors selling to agencies, this bill could lower entry barriers, forcing companies to highlight employee capabilities over resume pedigrees and proposals, reframing how teams are onboarded and qualified. And I think it's a good thing if it's done properly. The other thing this is going to do is put stress on your internal HR and your talent strategy people. Enterprises that support government clients need to mirror this skills-first ethos. HR systems must evolve to flag proven technological competencies, certifications, and project-based experiences, not just educational credentials, when building federal targeted project teams. So I'm on board with more talent coming in, talent that has the skill but not necessarily a degree. But we can't use this as an excuse to allow script kiddies into the Social Security Administration, stealing all the citizens' data and uploading it to an insecure site. When these two stories hit in the same relative time frame, it almost sounds like the second one is trying to justify the first. And that scares me more than anything. So hopefully that's not what we're looking at here. Next up, from Bleeping Computer, who knew pixels could talk? Here's something surreal. An AI trick so slick, it hides malicious commands and images, and those same images, once resized by AI, turn into data-stealing weapons. If that lead-in doesn't terrify you, I don't know what does. Researchers have unveiled a new form of AI attack where prompts intended to steal user data, like credentials, are stealthily embedded in high-resolution images. These prompts remain visible to human eyes, but these prompts remain invisible to human eyes, but appear once the image is downsized by AI systems, triggering unauthorized behavior in large language models or multimodal systems. The technique exploits... didn't change there. That was silly. The technique exploits how AI services routinely resize images before processing, downscaling, and that can reveal hidden instructions via manipulated pixel brightness. When processed, the AI unwittingly executes the embedded prompts. A tool dubbed Anamorpher was developed by researchers to craft such images specifically tuned to various downscaling algorithms and target systems like Google's Gemini CLI, Vertex AI Studios, and others. The attack highlights vulnerabilities in indirect prompt injection, where AI treats untrusted content as legitimate instructions. This has been flagged as a serious risk by security frameworks like OWASP. Think your image gallery is safe? Not so fast. Your AI's resizing routines might be turning hidden ink into full-blown hacks. So the new security risk for AI-powered applications, just what we needed because we didn't have enough security concerns about AI already. Enterprises deploying generative AI or multimodal models must recognize that even benign-looking images can carry hidden instructions. This widens the attack surface, especially in the models that process images for tasks like document handling or user support. I know my use, I tend to send a lot of documents or PDFs into my AI models, and that certainly paints a target on my back there. So this will seriously make me reconsider how I'm processing these things. This demonstrates a critical need for endpoint sanitation pipelines. Security teams must validate or sanitize images before feeding them into AI pipelines. This might include running pre-processing filters, scrubbing or carefully inspecting downscaled versions, or enforcing strict content safety protocols. All of this adds overhead to an already burdened system, basically, which is not going to make life easy for anybody. Implications for model integrity and compliance are also attached to this. If AI generates responses or worse, takes actions based on maliciously injected prompts, enterprises may face compliance risks, data leakage, or regulatory penalties, particularly in regulated sectors like finance or healthcare. So this is another one of these things where the bad guys are always more creative than the guys that are defending, and we're always playing catch up here. This highlights a probably rising trend in how AI is being used, which, usage patterns can be changed to mitigate this. But again, it's another one of these cat and mouse examples here where we think you're safe until you're not safe. So again, another one that we're going to have to keep an eye on. We'll update you as we see more on this. As far as I know, there haven't been any exploits in the wild yet. But if there are, we'll report on it. Next up is an article from Bleeping Computer again. When Git misreads, your system pays. Cloning that Git repo may feel safe, but it just got a lot sketchier. CISA has added a critical Git vulnerability to its known CISA has added a critical Git vulnerability to its known exploited vulnerabilities catalog, warning that attackers are actively exploiting it. The agency has set a patch deadline for federal agencies of September 15th of 2025. The flaw originates from Git's mishandling of a carriage return character, the /r, in configuration files. A mismatch between how Git writes versus reads these characters can cause incorrect submodule paths, leading to behavior where attackers embed malicious submodules that can trigger arbitrary code execution when cloned. Patched versions of Git were released in July of 2025, covering versions 2.43.7 through 2.50.1. These should eliminate the vulnerability. For organizations unable to update immediately, mitigation steps include avoiding recursive submodule clones from untrusted sources, disabling the get hooks via the core.hooks path, or restricting use to audited, trusted submodules only. So the DevOps environments, again, this is another example of attacks switching from the front-end user and cloud side to the back-end side of the development and supply chain side, which I don't know if it's a bigger threat. It probably is, because you're producing trusted software through these resources that once they're out in the open, they compound that problem because nobody's paying as much attention to them from a security standpoint. Git's a central modern development workflow. It's used in development pipelines. We use it where I'm at, shared repos and collaboration tools. A code execution vulnerability here opens the door for supply chain attacks, build contamination, and even full compromise of production environments. So this is a serious threat, and as the article mentions, there are instances of it already being used in the wild. This also speaks to build systems like your continuous integration and continuous delivery having to be hardened at this point in time. Areas that traditionally aren't an area of concern. Since they're inside your network, they're not exposed to the public typically, and they're usually fairly well trusted. Enterprises frequently run automated builds that clone repositories without manual oversight. We used to do that at a previous company. We don't do it so much where I'm at now. The vulnerability underscores the necessity of enforcing secure cloning practices, sanitizing submodules, and restricting hook execution through hardened get configurations and containerized isolation. Although there was a exploit in Docker Desktop this week as well that makes you kind of gun shy about your containers as well. This also speaks to the patch management and vulnerability intelligence alignment in organizations. The addition to CISA's KEV list signals real-world exploitation, which has already been confirmed. Enterprises must sync with threat feeds, not just monitor CVSS scores, and treat medium or high severity flaws as emergency patches if proof of concept code exists in public view. And finally, the last point to discuss is the architectural segmentation and cost of remediation for something like this. Organizations should segment developer environments from critical infrastructure. That's hard to do, especially from a testing standpoint and authentication standpoint. It's not impossible. It's just difficult, inconvenient, but security and convenience are mutually exclusive. When immediate patching isn't feasible, isolating Git usage and limiting which systems can execute post-checkout actions helps reduce the blast radius. This might also inform risk-based decisions about workload placement and pipeline redundancy in the future. So, not a whole lot more to say about that. Another risk to look out for, but I think my emphasis on that would be not the vulnerability or the attack itself, but the shift in tactics and malicious attackers coming in from a different vector at this point that needs to be watched. We do have a third segment this week that's kind of a review. Kind of wonky, didn't really fit in anywhere else, but it was something I wanted to talk about. So we'll be right back and we'll talk about that.
Insights into Teens, a podcast series exploring the issues and challenges of today's youth. Talking to real teens about real teen problems. Explore issues from braces to puberty, social anxiety to financial responsibility. Each week, we talk about the topics concerning today's youth. We look at how the issues affect teens, how to cope with these issues, and how parents, friends, and loved ones can help teens handle these challenges. Check out our video episodes on youtube.com/insightsintothings. Catch our audio versions on podcast.insightsintoteens.com or on the web at insightsintothings.com.
Welcome back to Insights into Technology. I wanted to talk a little bit about the gamefold table from Yarrow Studios. Now, this is something, yes, it's not strictly technology, and we don't normally do reviews here, but I think it being a Kickstarter funded project, I think it certainly fit into what we do here. This was supposed to be a foldable gaming table that promised portability, versatility, and modular design for tabletop gamers. We do D&D in my house from time to time, and we play typically on it's a 40-inch digital gaming board that I have animated maps that I can put up on. It's built through a 40-inch TV into a frame that's a tabletop frame. So we throw a lot of technology. I throw a lot of technology into my D&D to try to capture the environment. And this was a very unique project that came out on Kickstarter a couple years back. I forget when exactly it came out. So it was a table, a folding table, and I think I can show you the video here. It was a folding table that had a rail system on it, and that rail system allowed you to connect any number of accessories, shelves, phone holders, drink holders. They had a dice bin that you could slide around the entire table. It was a really slick idea. It was very novel, and it looked like it would be perfect for my gaming. It delivered on some of that promise. What it really delivered was a year of delays, poor communication, and a final product that feels nothing like what was advertised. Full disclosure, I paid regular Kickstarter prices for the table and an accessory set, which we're about to review. This was not given to me by Yarrow Studios for the purposes of review. And as such, you're going to get a brutally honest review and my experience with the product so far. Just be warned. So the blunt truth, the table finally arrived after multiple missed deadlines, countless redesigns, and refund requests that were ignored entirely from me. The setup was promised to be quick. It's not. It was promised to be simple. It's not. And it's definitely not portable in the sense of it's a pain in the ass to move around. It's so heavy and it's awkward. There's no easy way to carry it. There's no comfortable way to carry it unless you opted for additional accessories. So when I first invested in the Kickstarter, there was a hefty price. It wasn't cheap. And that promised to give you, all the accessories. It gave you the table. And then as the project dragged on, they kept coming out with more accessories and more add-ons and more redesigns. And it got to the point where it was such an over-bloated product, and it hadn't even come out yet. The so-called rail system, one of the key selling points, is useless without the accessories. I got the table. I have no accessories. What's the point? They weren't included with the table despite the package including them. Why these were shipped separately, I just saw a notification or an update today on the project that shipments to Europe are about to start, including accessories, which doesn't help. So I have no idea when I'm getting mine. I was told that they will be coming later. There have been stories about shipping issues and packaging issues and tariff issues. And, if these guys wanted to do something constructive, they could write an excuse book at this point. They've had so many excuses on this. The design that I got was so far removed from the original promo materials, it's basically a different product. And it's one that's overbuilt. It's impractical, and it's borderline unusable for its target audience. There were no printed instructions on the box. You had a QR code and had to have an internet connection and a phone or something to put it onto, and then you're trying to look at how to assemble these small parts on a tiny screen on your phone. It was just a terrible experience trying to figure out how to put the thing together. And then once you do have it together, it needs to be assembled every time. There are angle brackets that you have to take off in order to close the legs. The legs start out short and have spring-loaded releases that you have to expand the legs to get them to a height that's usable, but you can't fold it back up like that. You have to close the legs down. They have a vertical support pole in the middle that doesn't even attach. You have to put it on every time that you use the thing. There was a holder on the back of the table to put it in, but that holder broke off within the first 15 minutes of trying to work with the table. It was supposed to have a handle on it. I asked support about the handle and was told that they decided to do away with the table because you can just use the rails. Well, yeah, you could, but you need to use heavy utility gloves if you're going to be doing anything with the rails, because they'll cut into your fingers because of how heavy this thing is and how sharp the rails are. Is it sturdy? Yeah. Once you take the 15 minutes, and the 2-person team you need, because even when the package arrived, it had on the side of the package team lift, minimum 2 people. What kind of portable table requires 2 people to set up, move around, and break down? That's just ridiculous to me. But once it's set up, the thing is sturdy. I mean, it's sturdy enough you could probably use it as a stage for a rock concert. It's so sturdy. But that's not what I'm using it for. I don't need something that's built like a tank. The weight, obviously, is a problem. The inability to move it around is a problem. They show you sitting on the table. Well, if any of my players sat on the table, I'd kick them out of the house. That's ridiculous. Why would that be a requirement or a selling point for me? The bottom line, the product is over-engineered. It was under-delivered. What they delivered was nothing what I had paid for. And it's not even remotely worth the cost. I opened it up. We ran one session on it. It was such a pain to set up and break down. It offered nothing more than the $20 folding table I was using from Walmart, which is a fifth the weight, comes with a handle, unfolds and folds, doesn't need to be assembled, and just flips the legs out. This is nothing like that. There are cheaper, easier, lighter solutions out there. If you're waiting on delivery, consider asking for a refund. I asked 3 times. And every time they ignored my request for a refund or gave me some other lip service or something like that, which by the second time clued me in that this was probably a scam. And then they came back and told me, you have to go to this pledge manager or something. You have to pay for your shipping, and then we'll get you on a list to ship these out. So I just spent, I don't know, I want to say $500, somewhere in that range, on a table that I haven't gotten yet. And then I waited. You're well past a year. And then you come and tell me I have to pay more for shipping to get it. Was just, the whole thing smelled like a Ponzi scheme to me. If you've received yours, good luck finding space to store it, because it doesn't store the way they say it does. And hopefully you've got a team of roadies to set your stage up for you every time you want to play, because it's a 2-person job minimum. And as heavy as this thing is, they have these cheap, flimsy plastic locks on the center that they compensate for by putting a slide bracket on the rail system itself that prevents you from using the wraparound dice box that was a major selling point, because you can't get past these rails now. So not only is it over-engineered, it was poorly engineered, and there were afterthoughts added to it later. So obviously I'm not particularly thrilled with this at this point. The initial delivery estimates were August March of February. Then it was August. I didn't get it in August of 2024. I didn't get it to August of 2025. Their communication, they pride themselves on sending updates, but the updates tell you nothing of value. If you were an original Kickstarter backer, they stopped updating the Kickstarter project. I don't know if they were kicked off of Kickstarter or not because of it. They moved it to their own blog. They'll send an email out that the link sometimes works, sometimes it doesn't work. They filter their threads in their comments. So if you post a comment and it's not a favorable comment, it has to be approved by them. It doesn't just go out, which is, like, I understand if you're going to want to filter out profanity and stuff like that, but if I'm going to give you an honest review and you need to filter it before it goes out, that's a bad sign right there. Bottom line, it's just not worth it. It's not worth the effort. It's not worth the wait. It's not worth the hassle of setting it up. Maybe My opinion will change when the accessories get here. But it's one of these things where once you set this thing up, you don't want to have to break it down because it's a pain in the ass to break down. But it's too big to leave set up in a temporary gaming environment. It was designed to be a convenient, folding, easily stored product that I could game on, and it's none of those things. So buyer beware in this case here. That was pretty much all we had today. Before we go on, I did want to throw a couple of shout outs out there. I've apologized. I've been very neglected in this. A couple of Twitch followers we got this week. Jordan Low Chicken, Laura _Dazzle, and Susan Fox 99. Thank you for subscribing to us on Twitch. It is worth mentioning that if you are a Amazon Prime subscriber, you do get a free Twitch Prime subscription monthly. If you threw that our way, we'd really appreciate that. And before we go, again, I want to suggest or invite you to subscribe to the podcast. Audio and video versions of the podcast can be found listed as Insights into Things. Audio versions only can be found listed as Insights into Technology. Please do reach out to us. Give us your feedback. If you bought a gamefold, I'd love to hear your experience and your opinion on it. Give us a call. Leave us a voicemail at 856-403-8788. Again, that's 856-403-8788. Or you can email us at comments@insightsintothings.com, or get links to all that and more on our website at www.insightsintothings.com. That's it. Another one in the books.